I believe I heard you saying it a few years ago, and I believe it comes from Popper. You were saying it around the question when Brexit was still very much being debated in the public square. And I think it does apply a lot today when people have this strange tendency to look at our democracies and lament how messy they all look and how conflicted we all feel and seem, and often have this strange adoration for authoritarian regimes and think perhaps I could be like that because it seems to work with a bit more harmony and a lot less mess and open infighting. And you said this, and of course, I think it's from Popper. He says, of course, if democracy is all about the best error-correcting system, error-correct bad leaders and bad policies, it is also the case that systems that are good at error correction are going to make more mistakes.
Yes, they're going to make more mistakes, more small mistakes. The authoritarian systems, of course, always collapse eventually because they are less able to solve problems. That's the whole point. And so you can have. By the way, we tend to look at long-lived authoritarian systems, like long-lived monarchies or the Egyptian pharaohs and so on. But most authoritarian systems don't last longer than the dictator, or even shorter than that. The practice of entrenching particular ideas and particular leaders is not itself a source of knowledge. It's going to entrench mistakes. And it's only a matter of time until a problem comes along that the knowledge in that system can't solve, and where the ideas that would solve it don't come into existence because proposing rival ideas has been suppressed in that system. So the mirage is that we see some long-lived authoritarian system, and we imagine that it's going to last forever because it says it will, and we compare it with the messiness and working at cross purposes that happens in democratic systems. And we say, look, here people are working against each other. There in that system, they're all working towards one end. Okay, so the end might be slightly wrong, but at least they're making progress, and then it collapses. I remember that by the way, this reminds me that in the 1980s, early 80s or something, some guy wrote a book called Will the Soviet Union Survive Until 1984? So it must have been before 1984 this book was written. And I remember how people ridiculed this. The idea that the Soviet Union is going to collapse was, by induction. They had seen it lasting for decades unchanged in its system. The idea that it would collapse was absurd. Science fiction stories, I remember science fiction stories about the distant future, the 200 or 300 years ahead, had stories about the Soviet Union and the United States as they will be in the 300 or 400 years' time, as if neither of them was going to change, so this idea that the authoritarian system was unstable seemed ridiculous, but it was perfectly true, and they always are. Even the ones that last for thousands of years, which are the remote exceptions, cannot deal with problems. For example, the Egyptian one was repeatedly overthrown and made very little progress in the thousands of years that it existed.